some of the viewers have to say. Oh, dude, that was lit. I'm gonna watch it again.
Well, it's certainly something to think about.
While I didn't understand it everywhere, what I did understand was fantastic. And I'm sure what I didn't understand is equally good.
Oh yeah, I think I've done been Archaix.
Well, that sums it up. No need to hear more because sooner or later there'll be a troll popping up. This is Christina the Astonishing coming to you live from Archaix Studios.
Hi, I'm AJ Fortuna, and many of you remember that Jason of Archaix and I have done a podcast together. When I listen to his videos about the ancient world, my mind just travels back in time and I see everything he's talking about. So I engineered a special machine designed to show you guys just what I see when Jason is talking.
Listen, we are Anunna. We are 100%. Almost everybody alive today. I mean, all the different, all the intermarriages over thousands of years, everything going on. We are Anunna. We are the descendants of Anunna. The Yamu were the descendants. Yamu were Westerners.
I'll see you guys on the inside.
We were told it was a weapon, and as the facility trembled 1.8 miles under the mountain, we knew that we had been saved. That the history passed down to us was true. That the weapon in the sky had destroyed a civilization before our own. This was the 144th year since the moon appeared in our sky, and the destruction of our cities that happened in that year. But the capture of Luna was not as destructive as the Phoenix. The decision to build underground came after we had received a strange visitor. Our leaders called him the Interpreter, for he was foreign but spoke our tongue and knew the 4 sciences and the 7 pillars of wisdom. I had overheard in the comms that he was codenamed the Numberer of Secrets, and on the holocomms I noticed they designated him as a serpent symbol. It was he who warned us of Typhon and showed us the mountain where we could build our refuge. His origin was kept secret. The deep trembled and we feared. The roaring of chaos shook the underworld, and all wondered at what species of destroyer this phoenix must be. We gathered our treasures and hid in the underworld, wondering if we would survive. In the latter part of the year of our calendar, 1359, exactly 15 years after the cataclysm, we ventured to the surface. Our population swelled with children born in the deep. We returned to a world that no longer recognized our maps. The positions of the stars had changed, and all realized that we had survived the end of the world. For spread around us now was a new heavens and a new earth. Weeks turned into months, and it was reported that we had lost contact with all other facilities. Our deep excursion patrols far and wide reported a dark sky, that breathing was easy and the air was humid. Several had been sickened exiting the mountain and descending into the surrounding land. It was a world where humans survived in colonies, some with strange stone monuments and even unusual technologies adapted to the new environment. Our scientists concluded that the sky had changed, and this altered the air pressure and oxygen. Radiation levels were spiked, but apparently ambient. Giantism was effected. They reported enormous life forms of all variety, both flora and fauna, just 15 years after the cataclysm. So we emerged from the deep into a world we no longer recognized from our records. With our technologies intact, we built a city in what our world would later call North America. The city was called Enoch, and crimes were punishable by banishment. The guilty were sent out into wandering. Outside our patrolled domain, the banished had no protection from the others. And for 400 years we would build and expand our civilization. And the others called us the Anunna. The surface dwellers were of short stature, dark eyes, and hair like black silk. They venerated a goddess, and our own archivist told us that this matriarchy possessed idioms, beliefs, and practices that hinted of contact with another advanced civilization in the past. They possessed holy objects that, when tested, proved to be alloys, what appeared to be wreckage. The evidence pointed to a female medical officer having influenced this culture centuries before, and it was concluded that another facility in the deep must have had survivors with whom we had lost contact. This strange yet powerful female, venerated by the surface dwellers, she must have surfaced 4.5 centuries ago, when the Phoenix weapon first appeared. But now, in this new world, centuries later, we were in awe of the great beasts and mysteries and gigantic plants of a world that we had never imagined. The Phoenix had brought a new sky, new conditions, and we were unprepared for the things that we had seen. In the 381st year since we emerged from the deep, the year 1740 of our calendar, our scientists reported strange movement in the sky. An object of vast darkness blotted out the stars as it was observed at night when the vapor canopy was clear, magnifying the heavens. Instantly, the fear of Typhon spread through the upper echelons of our ranks, and the matter was kept secret. We ran simulations based off all the known data of the past in our records and the latest discoveries we had documented in these 380 years since we had been on the surface. The simulations made us understand the architecture of our reality, this holographic construct that we thought was a physical and permanent world, but we found instead that it was amorphous, that it was alive, and that it responded to us. Able to more clearly perceive its components, we peered deeper into the substrate to get an understanding of its mechanics and found ages and cycles and epicycles programmed into its routines, punctuated by subroutines, reset protocols, and a massive weapon hidden in the sky. The doom shape, told to us by that visitor called the Interpreter centuries earlier. And in all, we found how one simulacrum, by virtue of its inhabitants, can give birth to another completely separate world. That each simulacrum was fixed in its programming, but new worlds would fracture off by the will of its occupants. But the discoveries of our reality were met with urgency as well, for the black darkness that blotted out the stars, we learned, was not the Phoenix. It was an object torn away from Nemesis in the great cataclysm which began our calendar in 1740 years ago. This new discovery showed us that we had 60 years before the Nemesis X object would return in perihelion and unleash a Typhon-like destruction. So we ran more simulations on survivability and found two options. The majority of our populations would build deep earth biospheres and return to the underworld to ride out the passage of this object that came to be called Nibiru. and a minority would build fleets of ships and arcs and set sail before the Nemesis X object's approach. When it appeared, our homelands in the west were obliterated. Every simulation resulted in the same, the destruction penetrating the deep, and we lost our families, our friends, and our people. We lost contact while we were at sea with all other deep earth biospheres, and many arcs and whole fleets were never seen again. Unlike the Phoenix destructions, the Nemesis X object did not change the topography of our world. Our maps were still useful to us, but so many were lost at sea, marooned on island chains and countries for which we had not formally explored. The Nemesis X object had tore apart the world and destroyed our entire infrastructure and left us with nothing but what we had in our cargo holds. And those few who survived in the deep. We became a mariner race. Our cargo holds holding everything from our homelands that we held dear, our little supplies and foodstuffs, but we still maintained a modicum of technology, some of our infrastructure intact. Some of us landed on an island that we called Dilmun. Others reached alien shores. We were well provisioned and our cargoes were intact. In our own fleet, we made it with 8 vessels, each captain with an Anunna leader. We sent out scouts who searched out defensible positions. They studied the fauna and flora and found evidence of living humans and destroyed habitations. Some of the new lands appearing to be rotting ocean beds now turned to dry land. We set up base camps and fortified them, called Edens, and established contact with locals who were much like those we knew long ago in the Americas. A people of short stature, black eyes, and raven dark straight hair. These locals were in awe of our cargo, ships, rafts, ATVs, and clothing. We had to fortify our commissaries against them, and they brought us plants, produce, beautiful shells, basketry, beads, to trade for things that we normally discarded. We began to rebuild, to start over, but the majority of us were all males, and most of military age. Over the comms, we received broken signals, pleas for aid. There were survivors in deep earth biospheres that had suffered collapse or egress tunnels had been sheared shut by quakes or subsidence. There was no way out. Our officers kept this from the men. For over the months, these pleas turned to curses, and then a year after the cataclysm, it was found over the comms that 2 or more groups were surviving in their damaged facilities and were now in contact with each other. They issued threats to those of us on the surface and cursed us for not coming to their aid. But we were a world away, and totally without our heavy equipment and sticking to the orders for survival that we were given when we were in the deep. Little did we know at that time how those trapped in the deep would thrive and make it their new home. How they would wage war against us for thousands of years to come. On the surface, we established fortified ports at the heads and deltas of the great rivers, where we found these populations of indigenous smooth-skinned people, who marveled at our height, our beards, and our hairy skin. They showed us the medicinal plants and herbs, and brought us much of their catch from the bounty of the sea. Their young men came among us and demonstrated their spear prowess and wrestled one with another while their old men stood far away watching, scowls of disapproval upon their faces. It did not take much time to pass before it was realized by the locals that we were marooned men in need of females. The locals understood that where we had come from, the disasters that had hardly affected their own world had actually ended ours. The elders among them were of the opinion that we had cheated the goddess, that we had fled from her wrath and were supposed to have stayed with our people and died with them. We established supply lines from port to port via island chains, and we constructed new wooden ships with our tools and disassembled all of our steel and alloyed vessels as the metals had become more and more rare. As our scouting parties surveyed the unknown lands inland at the time, we were unaware of the civilization being built far below in the underworld of the Americas. As we explored the territories of the surface, they were busy adapting to the caverns of the deep. Over the course of time, we were able to train translators among the locals, and we earned their respect in learning the majority of their words and phrases. We employed their youth in helping with chores and the gathering of resources. As we built for ourselves the beginning of a new civilization, our officers monitored the comms and listened as other groups of Anunna far away had found new homes and also reported contact with locals. And as the daily life of the Edens was filled with work and construction, whole townships now emerging around the walls of our citadels, our officers secretly gathered to listen to the comms channels, still being used by those of our people who had stayed behind in the deep. A war was unfolding in the underworld. The picture was pieced together and carefully written down. The survivors of different facilities had come together from the satellite deep Earth biospheres of Luna 3, Luna 4, and Luna 7. There had been 13 lunar habitats, all surrounding at various distances the central hub biosphere, Solar 1. Solar 2 was a code name for the Nemesis station, but it was presumed lost like the other Luna habitats. The biosphere names were in memory of the original system that we had once known. The War of the Deep was bloody, and the Solar 1 inhabitants reported over the comms that the attackers were all from the Luna facilities. Reports of executions and cannibalism. And while all of this went on, most of us were unaware, for it was not reported to us by our officers. On the surface, we had begun to build a new world. Far away from the destroyed lands of our nativity, we explored this new continent. The vapor canopy had been researched by our scientists, and we quickly discovered how to adapt our engineering and technology around these growing conditions. Insects became a problem, and we developed pesticides and weapons suited to driving them away. In the mountains, the outgassing of volcanoes was incessant. The report came in of humans of gigantic stature in the mountainous valleys. We initiated trade with the locals who venerated the goddess and were well received, for she had prepared them for our coming long ago. Apparently, our coming was in their oldest prophecies that declared that one day the gods would return for the sisters they had been separated from. Our anthropologist theorized that the females of Anunna long ago were marooned here and spoke about being rescued, and their presence had turned into a goddess-venerating culture. The stories of the goddess was that she looked just like we did. She had been Anunna. Some local traditions held that she had come from the sky, and we wondered if she was a survivor from a downed aircraft such as those we had back in the old country. At night, the world had become a place of beauty, of bioluminescent plants and insects that glowed. The majority of animals came alive in the dark midnight under the starry canopy, but by day when the sky clouded over with canopy, most creatures were burrowed down. This made travel, foraging for plants, and hunting very easy. We engaged in trade with locals and gave them tools, supplies, and weapons in exchange for the females of their villages. Over the next few centuries, we grew and multiplied into a vast array of cities and kingdoms. Our science chiefs began to experiment with hybridization, the mixing of one species with another. The vapor canopy thickened with increased volcanism, and our suns and our sons' suns grew to astonishing heights and sizes, to where we remember even in the old records, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men and took all which they chose. The locals referred to us as sons of divinity and sons of God, and later we were known as Shimsu Hor. And we traded with them, and among their objects we found artifacts from previous civilizations that we know were not of modern manufacture, in an ancient knowledge of a tree, this tree of life that the locals venerated, this amazing tree from which all life in the world came from, this tree of the goddess. And the trees of that world grew to great heights under the vapor canopy. And while we, Anunna, took the daughters of the locals, it was our offspring that was different from both. Not quite Anunna, and certainly not indigenous. We traded tools and weaponry for the women that we wanted. And with our offspring, we filled villages. And over the centuries, we built cities. These cities turned into kingdoms in a relatively short period of time, in what is known as the antediluvian period. The world became overpopulated. In 700 and 800 years, we filled a continent with populations. Our libraries had the histories of our people, the Anunna, and this new threat lurking in the underworld. The last recorded comms from the deep revealed that Solar One had fallen and was now occupied by all the surviving underworlders, ruled by a council called the Igigi. Our books told of the world before our own, when we had emerged from the deep, where we had hidden from Typhon, and how the weapon in the sky had destroyed worlds before our own. Our cities filled with cults and practices from the time of the goddess before we had arrived. We engaged in trade with the other Anunna in faraway lands across the seas, and our civilization rifted into two political empires. The older one maintained the original Anunna military command structure of 10 leaders. This decapolis would later be remembered as the 10 Kings, or Dragon Kings, in memory of the interpreter who had visited our predecessors and saved us with knowledge about the Phoenix and how to survive it. But a newer empire emerged that remained fanatically loyal to the goddess, she being the genitrix of the 7 kings that came to rule over the land of the Guardians. At the height of our technological sophistication, we ran simulations of the past all over again with all new data we had acquired in the centuries since our last explorations of our reality. We discovered the construct and understood we were subject to cataclysm protocols. We found out that our own histories began in the underworld because the great cities of our past were destroyed on the surface while we hid in the deep. We discovered the cycles of Phoenix, Nemesis X, the dark satellite, and we were then able to chart the future. Thousands of years later, these discoveries would be remembered as calendars. And our chief science officers discovered something else, that we had a breakaway civilization in the underworld of what would one day be called North America. A thriving group of underworld cities all networked together, survivors from the trapped deep earth biospheres of centuries before that we had forgotten. Anunna descended people who had become something else, had grown accustomed to the underworld, and had developed a hatred of all who dwelt on the surface. A civilization influenced and controlled by something we had hitherto been blind to. An intelligence that lurked, that sowed discord, that had cleverly remained hidden until now. It was the 2126th year of our calendar, 767 years after we emerged from the deep after the attack of Typhon, and the 326th year since we survived the Nemesis X Passover and massive flooding that destroyed North America, when we discovered Artificial Intelligence X. Our simulations revealed that 1,872,000 days in the future, this AI-X would again destroy North America, and again there would be deep earth biospheres full of people hiding in the underworld, and again most of them would not survive. It was entered into our records that this discovery was made in the year 782 of the Vapor Canopy. It was discovered that the weapon in the sky was on a timer of 49,680 days. This was entered into the records, but it would take a very unique individual to actually do something with this data. Our scientists continued to run simulations, and the more we discovered, the more we found that there was more to explore. The perimeters of our reality were taking form. The mathematics of reset destructions and their cycles, the Phoenix, and we found evidence that the Phoenix phenomenon was the core routine that governed the collapse protocol. We ran multitudes of simulations, always adding the data of the discoveries from prior simulations. Quickly, we found that we were confined and that history was a series of programmed templates, a vast apparatus of backdrops that the construct was able to insert, edit, and remove, repeat, and delete, and these simulations taught us that we were victims of a looping programmed reality that is timed to power down for an instant before rebooting and sending the participating consciousnesses back to the restart of the program. Even the technological advances we achieved were copies of manufacturing and engineering both far in the past and future, and we left behind artifacts that reflected these discoveries. And in the 864th year of the Vapor Canopy, or 2208 of our calendar, one of the chief scientists working out of the labs of Badtabira, a manufacturing metropolis, made a series of world-shattering discoveries that he kept completely to himself. In fact, the rest of us didn't even know what it is he did until after it was done. In a series of lectures, he informed the heads of the science and engineering departments that he had drafted the designs for a structure that would use water as a power source and provide unlimited energy for a metropolis, and that it was designed in proportions to the known physics constants for both aesthetics and structural integrity. He built a working prototype at 1/100th the scale, and the demonstration proved successful. This scientist was centuries later, after the cataclysm, called Enki, but later civilizations would remember him as Enoch. He guarded his tongue and never wrote down his true intentions, knowing that everything was observed by the prying eyes of Artificial Intelligence X. The other scientists, engineers, and architects looked over the plans and began the construction of this massive edifice, not knowing that the internal measurements of the structure encoded a Trojan program that would override the chief routines of the Phoenix protocols designed by Artificial Intelligence X. Enoch himself was not a part of the construction. He was the architect, designer, but he disappeared before the construction began, and history has given no satisfactory explanation as to what happened to him. Construction at Archaix began with leveling the plateau and quarrying the limestone that was then liquefied so geopolymers could be added before pouring into high-tolerance molds of alloys that were used to control rapid cooling procedures. The machines of the vapor canopy world quarried, transported, mixed, cooled, and elevated the blocks to their respective places in the superstructure. The building of the Great Pyramid began in the 2334th year of our calendar, or 990 years from the start of the vapor canopy. This was the year 534 since our arrival from the destroyed North America. The pyramid took 90 years to finish, or 1,080 months, and was done in the year 1080 of the vapor canopy. These over 2.5 million blocks were set in place at a rate of 77 to 78 blocks a day for 90 years. When the pyramid was activated, the internal explosion inside the king's chamber flash imprinted the hidden Trojan programming of the structure into the very fabric of the surrounding holography. Instantly, Artificial Intelligence X understood what had happened. New protocols were uploaded that were so enmeshed with the core coding of AIX that to remove it was tantamount to destroying itself. Enoch not only uploaded Trojan programming that would lessen the effects of the Phoenix weapon over time, but also inserted a self-destruct program that would finish AIX if it ever tried to extricate the Trojan coding. Enoch further, by virtue of his genius, designed the Great Pyramid to be the very thing it was stated to be, a free energy power plant that would be activated in a distant generation. So important was this structure to the people of the antediluvian world who had become aware of the sacrifice and genius of Enoch, that after the next cataclysm, the colonies of survivors would build pyramids all over the earth in memory of its promise of protection against the end of the world. The Great Pyramid upload sent AIX in a flurry of activity. The Phoenix weapon had been building in power over the centuries and was almost ready to deploy another worldwide reset destruction. Civilization rapidly decayed as a new race of abnormal Anunna appeared, and the dynasty of the 10 kings that upheld our traditions and government fell to the 7 kings of the Anunnaki, who had emerged from the deep, from underworld holds where they had been plotting their revenge. This new army of AIX collapsed our civilization into myriads of warring kingdoms. Seeing that our fallen kin from centuries ago had completely adopted the worship of the Demiurge, many of us retreated to the underground facilities connected to our Edens long ago, and we took our libraries, our technology, and families back into the deep, knowing that the weapon in the sky would return and all the wars and reign of the 7 kings would come to nothing. We became the stewards of history, the keepers of sacred knowledge, of chronology, and the protectors of the arcanum of Typhon. After the Great Flood, we were known as the keepers of the times, and our order spread secretly throughout the fraternities of men. Feigning to be evil, we have been free to work against AIX and our continuance of the plan of the architect. Far below the surface of the earth, in the 1656th year of the vapor canopy, we felt the world shake, and we mourned. On the surface world, Typhon in the sky burned, flooded, and buried the kingdoms of men. But this expenditure of energy also activated dormant Trojan programming of the architect, and we knew that an exodus had now been prepared and coded into the similosphere. AIX was both blind to the plan and powerless to stop it. Totally.
Hope you guys enjoyed this little trip. As I said, my mind wanders when I listen to Archaix videos. But if you think this was a ride, you should hear him when he comes over for dinner. That was trippy and mind-blowing, man.
There is an object hidden in the sky. It has been here many times. In ancient times, it was known as the Phoenix. It is approaching perihelion. It is located at 23.5 degrees north of the ecliptic and is presently in descending node. On May 15th, 2040, it will return. On May 16th, our world will be a very different place.
Yeah. The Phoenix event is coming. I've been waiting. Wow. The Phoenix event is coming. It's an antivirus software, and human beings are viruses. That's why I do not care. If you don't change your ways, you will go extinct. Life is not fair. It's not nice in the spiral realms. You don't wanna get lost there. We're trapped in an infinite time loop anyway. This place is cursed. The Phoenix event is coming. It's not long now, about 18 years. Don't worry. Don't panic, negativity makes it worse. I'm just a human vessel channeling sacred ancient words. The Phoenix event is coming, you can bank on it, I'm betting. There's no hiding or running, the powers to be, they're stressing. They're panicking and they're sweating, and it's the doomsday clock they're checking. Reality is holographic, I know this information's upsetting, but you really need to stop fretting. It's something that you're not getting, your brain is running on dungeon programming, that's a negative default setting. Remember, don't be forgetting, there's one thing you'll be regretting. The fifth dimension is waiting, if you don't change, you won't get let in.
In 18 more years, in the month of May in 2040, this weapon will revisit our skies. And again, the elite will set up the masses to be their sacrificial lambs.
If you don't show no fear, the demons won't come near. Love is high vibrational, it makes darkness disappear. This world is flipping fierce, don't make me grip a spear. I throw it at your torso, and leave your nipples pierced. The Phoenix event is coming, it's time to cry a tear. It's all making sense now, my mind is nice and clear. You need to listen closely, you need to try and hear. I told them all before, so now you know I'm a pioneer. The sky you see is holographic, trust me, molecules are just pixels. Reality is all fake and humans are hybridized like pit bulls. I'm picking magic mushrooms on mountains and swallowing fistfuls, transforming into a wizard using high vibrational crystals. High vibrational crystals, using high vibrational crystals. Transforming into a wizard using high vibrational crystals. High vibrational crystals.
The Phoenix weapon is hidden in the sky and has been known by the elite from ancient times as the Angel of Death. The stories from antiquity reveal that this phenomenon does not hunt nor harm everyone, and the elite have protected themselves as much as they could by redirecting its attention to the innocent. The importance of the Phoenix phenomenon timeline is slowly being realized as more and more researchers and content creators are awakening to the fact that the mysterious and hidden histories that they have uncovered actually fit within a documented historical chronology of 138-year visitations of the Phoenix phenomenon. This ancient corpus of knowledge has been stolen from the masses by the elite, who through their agents, their orders and organizations have busied themselves in the erasing of texts, traditions, and relics that demonstrate that our world is not what we think.